yet, or is it exactly on noon? It's afternoon. Okay, good noon, everyone. I went to the Arctic this summer, and I brought a little bit back for all of you. It's beautiful, and we've all fallen in love, and we've all seen its beautiful vistas and its amazing creatures. I signed up for this expedition not really knowing what to expect. I knew it would be glaciers and icebergs and beautiful landscapes and amazing creatures, but what I didn't know is that I would also be immersed in a community of people who struggle with their own environmental and civil rights issues daily. What I want to impart to you today is that climate change is not only affecting its landscape, its people, and its wildlife, but that what happens in the Arctic will affect us all. And the mission of the organization that I traveled with is that awareness is the root of change, and by exposing youth to the Arctic in a tangible way through relationships and firsthand experiences, that they'll be able to look at climate change with a more global perspective. Their slogan, "Save the poles, save the planet," while sounding simplistic, pretty much is the bottom line. So, think of the Arctic as the world's air conditioner. Its shiny ice covering reflects sunlight and heat and keeps the northern hemisphere cool. And without this, things are going to get very hot very quickly. But before you can truly understand the situation in the Arctic today, I first need to explain some things about the people that live there. The Inuit people, the Inuit meaning the people, is a group of people that we rarely hear about as Americans or the world at large. But they've lived in the Arctic for centuries, and while they have modernized and some of their traditional ways have changed, they remain on their native lands to this day. Much like the Native Americans, they were forced to assimilate and subject to land grabbing by dominant invaders, and this left their communities devastated, impoverished, and disconnected with their traditional past while struggling to connect with their present. This led to substance abuse, suicide rates going sky high, and depression within their communities. Many of the students my age, that's 16, had stories of people they knew who were also their age, who suffered from abuse, depression, and addiction. But the Inuit are a very adaptive people, and their culture and traditions are what gives them this strength. So, inspired by the civil rights movement in the United States, by the 1970s, the Inuit rallied. They fought for, demanded, and won more local autonomy. And they opened traditional schools that honored their native ways. By 1999, they had established their own territory in Canada called Nunavut. And these Canadian Inuit were the people that we spent most of our time with. In fact, half of the students that were on the trip with me were Canadian Inuit. The strength of this culture comes from today's youth, and while they've been modernized in many ways, they no longer live in turf huts and igloos. They live in houses with electricity, and they can go to the supermarket to get food, and they have iPhones and jeans and pop culture just like us. And this threatens their traditional ways, but a heightened sense of cultural awareness has kept their traditional ways alive. Many of the students that I met on our trip taught us traditional Inuit games, dances, and we did art together, and we throat sang, and we played soccer. The Inuit are a hunting culture, and they used to survive primarily off capturing caribou, seals, gathering salmon berries, and then expressing these traditions through their art and storytelling, dancing, drumming, education, and language. and language. And these traditions, through their newfound identity, are still alive today. Because of the changes in the Arctic, the Inuit have become a voice against climate change. They maintain that respecting and understanding their climate is vital to their survival. They have lived for centuries with a caretaker mentality, understanding that their values must balance the ecosystem that they live in, and that our conqueror mentality, the mentality of many modern societies, is something that must go if we are going to have a sustainable future. Many of the changes seen by the Inuit have been sea ice conditions, glaciers, weather conditions, water levels, temperatures, species, and humidity. And all of these have started to affect their food sharing culture, their ability to find enough food, and their sources of fresh water as the glaciers recede. And the traditional ways of the Inuit rely on their ability to listen to their climate and to listen to their environment. And this has led the Inuit to environmental activism. The Inuit have provided vital information to climatologists on understanding the effects of climate change in the Arctic, and they have reminded all of us at the Paris climate talks that the Arctic is the barometer of health of the planet, and that this barometer of health is melting and warming at a rate twice as fast as the rest of the world. Now, why is that? Well, the reason primarily that this is happening is because of black carbon. Now, black carbon is soot, and it's different from carbon dioxide in that, well, carbon dioxide isn't exactly helping the problem. It's not really the main cause of melting glaciers. Black carbon comes from diesel fuel, from burning wood, but in the Arctic, its primary source is flaring, which is a practice common in oil wells. Black carbon has been linked to respiratory illnesses all over the rest of the world, but in colder regions like the Arctic, black carbon peppers the surface of glaciers with black particles, and this causes the glaciers to absorb more heat from the sunlight and melt. It's like going outside wearing a black shirt on a sunny day. You're gonna warm up way faster than if you were wearing like a white shirt. But imagine your body is the glacier and your t-shirt is made out of a deadly air pollutant. We must reduce our carbon dioxide and our black carbon emissions. But while CO2 stays in the climate for centuries or longer, and black carbon remains there for weeks tops, it is 100,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide, and it's a very powerful short-term contributor. So if we were to just leave carbon dioxide alone for the time being, because that would be far more difficult than cutting down just our black carbon emissions, and we were to focus on black carbon, we could slow the rate of melting glaciers in the Arctic exponentially. And this is key to saving our Arctic. Fortunately, there is technology that exists that can cut down on our black carbon emissions, and all we have to do is implement it. So I'd like to finish by saying what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. And all these issues, extreme weather, raging forest fires, animal extinction, sea levels rising, these will come to us. We are one planet, and we need to be responsive to its needs. These issues need to be on our radar, and we need to care what happens in the most remote regions of the planet. And while you may be thinking to yourself, how can our actions really make a difference? You may be feeling paralyzed by the overwhelming largeness of this situation. But small steps do lead to larger ones. And while this problem is a huge one, awareness of these problems is essential to solving them, and it is the only way we will be able to navigate the changes we need to make. The Inuit are our future, and what happens to them will happen to us as the climate warms. And sustainable living is the key. Inuit hold that land is not owned and that it belongs to all animals and people. And one thing we can take away from the Inuit is that by adopting this caretaker mentality instead of a conqueror mentality, this is one thing that we can do to really help. The first step to solving any problem is learning all we can about that problem. And the first step to solving this problem is awareness. Thank you.